Hey, welcome to the pre-roll for Electric Libertyland, episode number 150. 150, guys, we did it. We made a perfectly arbitrary milestone. God damn, I'm proud of us. Mostly me. Done most of the work. You guys really haven't contributed much. Anyway, you can start contributing, though, you lazy sacks. Number one, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. You can join, get in on our secret pride group as little as $2. $5 for all of our bonus content. And we've got that new tier for Nittany level. If you get in at $50, you get to choose a conspiracy corner after 3 months. You get to choose a movie for us to review. And we're going to add on some other stuff as well. So check that out, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. Also, if you are in Los Angeles, November 15th, we are going to be doing, and I say me and Mark are the we, John, lazy bastard in Pittsburgh, Odermatt's not going to be out here. But Mark and I will be opening up as the speakers at the fundraiser for the Libertarian Party that's occurring. It is a rockin' fundraiser with several punk bands playing. Also, keynote speaker Adam Kokesh will be going on after us. And that's going to be down at Surf Dogs Bar and Grill. You can find a link to buy tickets for the event at the show notes, lionsofliberty.com/ELL150. All right, let's get on into it.
Welcome to Electric Libertyland, here on the Lions of Liberty podcast, your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty with your host, Brian McWilliams.
Who do you think has the nicer set of jugs, Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris?
Oh, you mean Kamala Harris, the mayor chick?
Yeah, the mayor chick or whatever. She has like titties, 2 of them, and then the other one also has a couple.
I go with the white chick.
Do you go with the white titties?
Care for the.
Why is it that you take the white gazumbas over the black titties?
Her ideology is not breast-like at all.
I actually thought I entered a time warp and went back 100 years because I could not believe somebody was asking this question.
What question?
Yeah, you said who's got the nicer titties, Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris? So continue on.
What did you think on the answer to that question?
I don't have an answer to that question.
You had to pick between the 2 sets of gazumbas.
By the question.
I won't even repeat it. It's so offensive. But go ahead.
This is the state of political discourse in America. That's why we have 3 people that own 50%, the same amount of wealth as the bottom 50%.
Because of the titty situation?
Yeah, exactly. Because this is the level of discourse. But I'm not going to speak, so you're going to have a very boring...
Oh, it kind of feels like you are speaking.
Okay, but I'm not anymore. Bye.
I know that mental illness can come in pairs.
Of titties or...
Phenomena.
What were you saying about a pair?
Yeah, like that you guys are paired together in this absurd... Continue on asking the questions that you...
What are you guys doing your interview about?
Yeah, we're doing our interview about Modi and the war in Kashmir and the end of the world, the climate crisis, but you're concerned about titties. So go on and answer, you know.
Well, okay. Do you prefer left titty or right titty?
Don't answer. I'm an anti-porn activist, as a matter of fact, but you're not going to get an interview from me about the subject because I want...
What's your favorite anti-porn? Is it people's ants? One last question. If a woman is president, the days that they're on their periods, would a vice president have to step up?
Your mother would be very ashamed that you're doing this kind of work. Seriously. Who do you work for?
Vice.com. Are you familiar with Vice.com?
I am familiar with Vice. This is something that Vice is doing? Shame on
It's a Vice piece, yeah.
I'm like shocked. You can see I'm speechless here because they do some pretty good political stuff.
It can't be Vice.
Not your precious Vice. Anyways, it was nice meeting you guys. Thanks. Nice meeting you.
You know.
Oh, yeah. So that obviously was not me out there doing man on the street. The work of Jesus out there, Titty Jesus. That was, in fact, the guest for today's show, Mr. Ryan Long, who's going to be joining me in just a moment. But I wanted to play that entire man on the street segment Ryan did so you guys know exactly why I brought him on the show, past the fact that he's just a very, very funny comedian and also enjoyed a lot of his stand-up where I was checking it out on YouTube. This video was posted in the Lions of Liberty forum by one of our listeners, which, of course, you guys can go take part. Go to Facebook, type in Lions of Liberty forum if you're not some bizarre weirdo who's flashing dicks all the time at us. And maybe if you are, it just depends on the shape and the size of it and if we really, really enjoy it. But answer a couple questions. Tell them you heard about it here on Electric Libertyland. We'll let you right in. But I wanted to share that because it was absolutely genius. He's got a lot of them on his page. And after the interview was over, Ryan had told me about another segment he did as well, which I encourage you guys to check out. I put it over at the show notes, which you heard at the top of the show. But check that out because it's basically a skit that he did for Torontopia about government taking over the weed industry there because the government has basically a monopoly on weed that they've given themselves. So he has a fantastic sketch on that. All right. So as mentioned, I am here with comedian Ryan Long. Ryan, what's up, man? Welcome to Electric Libertyland.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. Cool.
Yeah. So, I found you, as I was talking to you a little bit before we started the show proper. I found out about you because one of the people in our Lions of Liberty forum had posted a hilarious video of you going to some of these events. I think it was like an anti-Trump rally, and we'll talk more about this later. But it was a hilarious video about what candidate has the greatest tits, which is premise-wise fantastic. But before we get into that, I want to know a little bit more about you, and I know you're Canadian. You told me you just moved to the U.S. a couple months ago, but, tell me a little bit about.
Yeah, I just got my green card official, so no ICE getting rid of me.
Oh, congratulations. ICE isn't beating down your door, at least not without somebody specifically requesting them?
Yeah, they do beat down my door, and then I just throw the green card in their face, and they have to take off.
Yes, you're using the green card to chop up cocaine, and they're like, you're lucky that's not our purview, buddy. We're going to send somebody else to take care of that.
Yeah, they could do anything.
But yeah, man. So, tell me a little bit about your background, how you got into comedy. And, I'm curious to see if you have a political bent and what that would be and if that has led you into kind of the comedy that you're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. So the pretty short version of it is when I was when I was young, even 15, I had a band in Canada that was pretty successful. And I was super into doing videos. I was big into Tom Green. And
well, hold on. I got to know what the band is now. We have to know that the band name is so people can Google it later.
Oh, okay. So I had a band called all of this. If you go to ryanlongcomedy.com, it's all of this you can corroborate and look at the links if you want. But so I had played in a band called the Johnstones. It was like a punk band, and then
nice.
We were pretty successful in Canada. Like a lot of songs on the MTV Countdown, and
nice,
did a lot of tours and all that stuff. And then because of that, my videos and all the stuff I was doing, I eventually got a TV show, which was me doing a lot of on the street stuff and messing with people. And then I had a couple different shows that came from that. And then during that time, I started doing stand-up comedy. So I've been doing stand-up for about 10 years now, and I became one of the kind of main headliners in my country. Mm-hmm. And did a lot of tours. And there's a club called the Corner Comedy Club that I was for the last 5 years. I was kind of one of the guys that would do 3 shows a night there for a long time. And then during that whole time, I have a CBC series, which is our national broadcaster called Torontopia. And then also I built up the video department for the hardtimes.net, which is a satire site, kind of like Young Ying, but about punk rock stuff. Yeah. And I did all their videos, and I've kind of built up all the traffic, and we kind of have a couple of TV series in development for that. And then so now I moved to New York. I've been here for 2 months, and I've gotten in with a bunch of the comedy clubs, so things are going pretty good. And then so the kind of video you're talking about is it's almost like a funny throwback in the sense that so I used to have TV shows doing all that kind of stuff, and I moved to America, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to, because I was doing so much stuff and doing all this press and everyone was finding out about me, I'm I'm going to do a little series for my Instagram and kind of, in my opinion, do a professional version of what people are doing, because I used to essentially do this stuff for a living. And I did this little series of about 10 videos just messing with people, asking crazy questions, and then they all got a lot of them went viral, and it got a ton of traffic. So I think a lot of people heard about it.
Yeah, man. I mean, they're awesome. Yeah. That's, a few of them I watched. Like I said, I watched the one with where you're asking at this Trump rally, and or was it at a Trump rally, or was it at a feminist rally, or the women's march? Where was this taking place?
So basically, every Friday, or no, every Saturday in New York, they do an impeachment rally.
people don't have a lot to do for the city that never fucking sleeps, right? They really managed to find time to do this dumb shit a lot.
It's so wild. They do it every single Friday. They just get up all right, we're doing it again. It hasn't worked apparently. So he hasn't gotten impeached. And then
keep at it.
So funny too. Yeah. So I think my in terms of the political bend, so I I actually I went to school for like economics, and I actually made this like podcast. So my podcast is called the Fckonomics Podcast, like Fckonomics, which is like me and another comedian has an economics degree, like talking about, you know, whatever culture and all different sorts of
That's
stuff.
awesome.
But
Do you still keep up with that? Is it still going on?
yeah, so we do. Yeah, we do it every week. So
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the one guy's still in Toronto, but he's moving here too soon. So, but we've been doing it with the two original guys, which was what the original podcast was anyway. But actually, funny that because I know that like I am into like a lot of this liberty stuff, and I actually listened to your podcast, and I forgot that I did one thing you might think is kind of cool. So I got a series on CBC, which is like a national broadcaster. So it's like, you know, it's funded by the government, right? Mm-hmm. And I did a libertarian sketch, which was because in Canada, the government took over the pot market, right? So if you know, like,
right.
Marijuana,
Yeah, totally.
Like, our government took it over, and they like, you know, it made it a big mess, and it was a nightmare, right? Like, as you would,
who would ever see that coming, right? In a million years, who would have thought?
Yeah, so my sketch was called Government Weed Dispensaries, and it was kind of like the government getting like, we're taking over all the weed stores. All right, now does anyone know how to sell weed? And the one was like, it's my aunt. How does it feel? Like, none of them know the first thing about it, but they're like, taking it over. So,
that's awesome. Yeah, I'll link to that. I'll find it. Yeah, I'll find it. I'll make sure to link to that. Because I'll link to everything for you I'll link to your website, and then I'll also link to it in our show notes, which will be at lionsofliberty.com.
I think your libertarian fans might like that. There isn't a lot of like, I know there's weed the internet that does some cool like stuff like that, but so
I'm actually seeing Lou Perez tonight. He's in Santa Monica. I'm going to go up and see his hashtag free hate speech tour.
Oh, no way. That's awesome. Yeah, I think he's really, me and him have like chatted about various like things over the years, and we've been meaning to like hook up now that I'm in New York. So
yeah.
I like what he's doing. He's done some really funny things. But so I think as far as the political thing, I think I kind of always had a little bit of a bend to like, you know, whatever freedom versus safety. And, you know, that's kind of the way that my mind works. And even like coming up in the punk rock scene, I've always kind of, and like doing an economics degree and kind of being like, I've always essentially been contrarian to like the environment that I grew up in, which is
right. Yeah. Well, of course, people always associate anarchy and punk rock together, and inevitably now. So,
of course, yeah. But I would like to say that I'm far more of like an artist. Like I would say that I'm more of an artist than I am my politics are maybe informed by like what the culture is at that time, but more so I'm an artist. So I kind of always am I'm always like skeptical always when anyone's politics start to like inform their art and it starts to become propaganda, right? So, you know, that's something that like everyone struggles with, the idea that, so a lot of times it's an energy thing, right? Like I kind of have that, like a lot of times I'll be pretty, you know, like making fun of like gay people or whatever, right? I would do that in New York or Toronto, but if I was in some place where people were homophobic, I like wouldn't feel like I'd want to do that, right?
Right, yeah. So you don't want to play into the biases. You want to challenge, or you might challenge the biases the other way. You don't want to play into them and kind of reassociate people's stereotypes.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's that. It's not even that that's what I want to do. It's that I kind of like instinctually know that's the way to make better things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
so
totally.
It's an energy thing, right? So yeah, kind of like the type of thing that I like to make. I'm like, you know, like I would consider myself like a satirist at its core, right? So I think a lot of times that I do have, you know, it's funny watching the comedy culture change right now, because, you know, the way we talk about it, I mean, to put it in like, you know, economic terms or whatever, it's like there's just a clear market inefficiency, right? It's like you go to, because, you know, after every show, I like do pretty like offensive stuff, but I don't think it's that offensive, but people do, and they go, "Wow, how can't believe you get away with that?" And you're like, "Well, I do every night, and no one cares." You know what I mean? And then you turn on the TV and be like, "Oh my God, this is the worst," or Twitter or whatever. So there's a real disconnect between what people actually want to hear and what the media is pretending they want to hear, right? So it's kind of like my friend Danny says that he had a good quote about this. He's like, it's like you go to everyone in Middle America and you go, "This is what you like now," and they go, "No, it's not."
Right? Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like, you know, it seems like everything's almost patronizing. You know, it's like all the comedies that you see, the sitcoms that are coming out, and a lot of the mainstream comedy, it's very patronizing. It's very, you know, it's like they're trying to grind people down and convince them of a way of thinking, and people, like, I think as a subconscious level, reject that automatically because they know people are trying to make a point rather than just be funny. And, that's one of the things that I just think has gotten so lost in comedy culture. And it's great. Like I was watching some of the videos of just your stand-up. There was one video I was watching of, black family, white family thing you did, which is really funny, and molesting versus fighting.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's very, 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 very funny stuff. But, it's like, even when we're talking about the videos of you going and talking to these people, it's like people get so kind of embedded in their biases or in their political way of thinking that it's now completely hampered their ability to see what's funny or to take a step back outside of themselves and laugh and understand satire. Like, that's what really hit me, man. It's like you're talking to these people and it's like the concept you're asking who's got the best titties that's running for president. It's clearly a ridiculous question, and these people can't seem to understand that, and they address it as though it is fact. It's like it's blowing my mind.
The more people are really, really sure about their beliefs, the easier it is to fuck with them, right?
Oh, for sure.
And this is like, so that's why, like, Ali G and those guys, like, it's like an art form but really the easiest people to mess with are the people that are the most sure of their beliefs, right? But it always changes, right? Like, it really used to be probably really easy to mess with, like, religious people, and that used to be like a fun thing to do. Whereas now it's almost like people like that have their, like, backs against the wall because they know they're like a bit of a punchline, right? So if I went and I was like messing with a Christian, they'd have the attitude more of like, yeah, I know, like, everyone thinks we're idiots. So yeah, it's like the winners, the people who, like, in their mind, they're like killing it. They're so right. It's not even funny. Those are the funnest people to make fun of, right? And that target's always like moving, but it's always a weird time too. Like with right now, I mean, this isn't like a new concept. Other people have always just said this, but they're like, this is 10%, like a loud 10% that thinks that, and the rest of the 90% doesn't. They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So it's like,
exactly right. Well, I think it's always like that vocal majority, but then, you do see the popularity of, comedy like yours and comedy like, we were talking before because I saw on your Instagram a picture of you and Louis J. Gomez, who is, of course, on the Legion of Skanks with Dave Smith,
man,
and, their comedy is like similar to what you and I think find funny, which is just, you can say the most atrocious things to people. And as long as they are funny, as long as they're hitting that core of like, it's like the subconscious, I know what's funny. I'm just going to laugh, unconsciously. I'm just going to have this reaction to something.
I would take that even a little further, like comedically, and my perspective is more that it's funny because you're not supposed to say it, in the sense that, like, so, but that will change. And I see that changing as well. Like if you go to a club and there's like a bunch of people that are like, say the fucking most gross stuff in the world, you're like, it kind of feels like not funny to do it now. You know what I mean? That's like, it becomes pandering, right? Like you're going to see a lot of that in 2 years, because really everyone's starting to be like, I'm sick of this. And you kind of have the equivalent of like Triggered much. Like there's an entire generation of like hacky comics that got like rejuvenated by this like movement, because before they actually were kind of like saying outdated, like piece of shit.
Yeah.
And then now they became like free speech warriors. So it's like it works both ways, right?
Damn, that's like, really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, because one thing I'd been observing for sure is, with this whole anti-Trump, like the state of comedy with Trump in the office for me has just been so upsetting to watch, because it's, it's like that people just the lamest jokes, you see the punchlines coming. So I was lamenting the state of comedy in that way. But also, to your point, you make a fantastic point that, you do get away, not you, but, comics that are more hacky do for sure get away with just pushing that boundary the opposite direction in the hackiest manner. And you're absolutely right. I never really thought about the flip side of that coin.
Yeah, I mean, the whole generation of comedy was rejuvenated, right? Like I mean, saying poo isn't inherently funny, but if you're 8 years old and you're at church and your mom says, if you say poo, you're dead, all of a sudden that became hilarious. Like if your brother and you, it's like, who's going to say it first? Like whatever. It's just like this inherent like naughtiness that like comedy stems from, right? And it's like, if you're in a room full of people that are telling you to say it, it's no longer naughty. It's like pandering now, right?
Right.
Which is, to me, is like gross.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, by the way, I wanted to ask you something too about, I wanted to compare and contrast. You just came over from Canada a couple months ago. You're official, you're here. Hey, what's the difference? Is there any difference in the comedy culture between the two? I mean, our countries are pretty similar, but there's definite differences there. Obviously, people always think of Canada being as far more polite, but we've got the Jordan Petersons of the world who hail from Canada. And
of course.
So I'm wondering, what have you seen a difference? Does it matter? Have you changed your routine at all? Are you seeing a different crowd reaction at all?
Well, there's two parts of it. So the biggest like part of it is that, so like our politics follow yours, right? So like Canada has the same, and like the kind of our woke stuff follows yours. They're like pretty much the same pace. So does everywhere else in the world, right? Like you can go to most corners of the world and like this stuff's like caught on, right? But the problem with like a country like Canada, it's the same as like anywhere that's smaller, is there's no room for a counterculture, right? So like in America, like Comedy Central and like all of mainstream comedy is essentially run by women, and it's kind of has that like a very specific you know, I mean, whatever. It doesn't need to be explained. Everyone's like alive to see it, right? But so everyone knows like what's being pushed right now as far as comedy, and people it's not really doing well. But there's a big counterculture, and I mean, to be honest, like Joe Rogan's special, like Chappelle, like these people are destroying those people, and they have huge careers and they're very famous. So the problem is a small place is there isn't enough room for a counterculture, especially financially. So really, it's like that stuff runs everything. It'd be like the radio singles essentially is like there's enough for 5 bands, so it really softens it out in the sense that there's no room for like in America there's these like metal bands that no one's heard of that are doing stadiums, you know what I mean? Like we don't have a version of that. We have like you're kind of a darling of Canada or you're not, right? And I think even Britain's a little more like that, but that's what America and New York has. So I for the last like 5 years, I mean I would say for the last like year and a half, I've been making television for my whole life, and you can see what happened, right? They basically said men are not going to be like in television anymore.
100%. 100%. I was just talking to another comedian about the same thing named Ryan Stout. Not sure if you're familiar with him or not, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's everything. And I know I do screenwriting as well, comedy screenwriting, and it's like every single program, every writer's project, every recruitment, looking for new writers, they explicitly are like pretty much no white men. You can be anything but a white man, and you're good.
You don't disappear. So what happened? It's like all of those people started podcasts, and then podcasts essentially became the biggest medium. Yeah, and podcasts is all run by men, and that's what YouTube's now all run. So it's like it's like you can re-engineer it, but it's like they're markets at the end of the day, right? So what happens? Like literally it used to be like all men are in TV, and you're like, okay, well that's not going to happen anymore, and you're like, okay, so now podcasts are the biggest thing. It's just this is what it is, right? You can't if you said like. This is what happened in music too, kind of. They had a big push, and they're like, hip hop's the only music now. And it's like, okay, so then DJs happened, and like tattooed, like skateboardy white kids that used to be in bands. Now they're DJs, and they're selling out these huge places. So
and now it's all Asian pop bands with men that look like women that are 16. I don't know. It's a crazy world.
Right. No, you can't make people disappear. But so when I moved to New York, I feel like for the last year and a half, I feel like every interview I've gone to with like a television company or production company, there's been a very big like, listen, like it's a big problem that you're like a white dude. Like, could we? I've had this conversation 20 times. Like, could we get like a female lead perhaps? Like, could you maybe like produce and write the show, but like find blah blah blah? And it's like, and then it was like even explicitly like networks, saying like, listen, like. There's no way we're going to do the show with a white dude. Like, is there any way we can do it? Blah, blah. And I feel like that I didn't feel that as much in New York. Like, I haven't felt as much like when I came to America that like when you walk into a room, there's like an energy of like another white guy. Like, I kind of felt that less here. And I think that's because the artists rule it a little more. Like, in New York, like the comics seem to be more in charge. The artists seem to be more in charge where they have more power. So it's like, the like fake industry rules they're invented. No one like respects them the same way that they do in a smaller place.
Well, it's like, I mean, out here in Hollywood, obviously it's ultra, woke town. So it
is, but who's the biggest people, right? Like Joe Rogan's still like,
Rogan's still killing it for sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's still the killers. I mean, look, you got Bill Burr is still a titan of industry, and he's as white as you could possibly get.
The actual big star that's bigger than these people. That's like a woke person. Like, I don't think that there's any like actual like Comedy Central branded like woke comedy that's like competing with these people. So they're not winning. They're like getting destroyed.
Oh no, that's exactly right though. That's what I was going to bring up next. Is it's kind of interesting to me. And you look at the marketplace and just the amount of content they're putting out is just specifically, centered towards the woke generation or, hyper diverse, or these, centered towards minority groups or minorities for now. They're going to be not minorities soon, but it's like, I can understand it. But at the same time, like we're talking about before, you don't really have shows that are biggest, they're not like the hits before, because it does seem a little bit like when you're trying to make content based around a concept rather than just around comedy, around the premise and about the best talent, it's going to be a lower quality. And it feels like that's what we're seeing. And I remember, God, I was reading the Hollywood.
Television's always made up tons of garbage, but
well, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of garbage out there. It's like, I mean, I swear to God, watching sitcoms from the 80s. Holy shit, man. If you watch a sitcom from the 80s lately and you're just like this, this was on television. People got paid to write this. But the
industry's always giving out a pile of junk.
Yeah, always. But what it was crazy. Like I was reading an episode or an issue of the Hollywood Reporter. It was like the women and diversity issue. And I just remember reading this one person's complaint was that she was a Native American woman, Native American heritage. And she's like, I just can't seem to get Native American specific content made for Native Americans. And I don't know why. And it's like, well, you're appealing to an ultra minority here. Yeah, and we got the entire broader country has to be partaking in this entertainment, but yet it doesn't stop them from publishing this shit in the Hollywood Reporter and making it as though it's this like big crime against humanity rather than simply a matter of economics and appealing to the broader population of the broader culture.
Yeah, they think everything should be propaganda for their cause. It used to be religion. I mean, it's not, but I guess I don't see it as much as like political, as much as just the industry's always got some new fucking thing. Like the one time it'll be like kids will be into emo and now they don't like Trump.
Right. Yeah. Well, it is fascinating how Trump's just overtaken everything as, the topic du jour. And I mean, I'm sure you're probably sick of hearing about Trump as I am, although it definitely plays well for your comedy.
I don't care.
But it's just like, God damn, man, just going out. You can't, it's almost like when you go out with people, you have to think about whether or not you want to bring up the Trump issue and, whether or not you want to go down that road. And it's almost awkward with you don't. It's like when somebody has, somebody tragic accident happened to somebody and you don't want to bring it up, but at some point it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. There's so many people that like, if you look at their Facebook like 3 years ago, it's like, they were like,
they were normal human beings.
The fuck they were into. Yeah. And now like their whole identity is they don't like Trump.
Oh, dude. Yeah. It's just exactly. It's like people have just transformed into this, this militia.
Or they like Trump. Yeah. Or their whole identity is they like Trump.
Oh God. Yeah. There's one guy, an Instagram guy I follow who's a friend or a relationship to a friend. And it's all he does is post Trump memes. And he does it, it's like this, it's the culture counterculture because like anything, we see this with comedy as well. You've got the ultra Trump people, the progressives, and then you've got the Trump people who I'm sure some of them legitimately like Trump. They like what he's doing economically, or maybe they just like the fact that he's, not an establishment guy. But at the same time, they're just embracing their troll and just, they know like the left's reaction is so ridiculous. Like we saw in your video, they can't take a joke. They lose their mind. So it's hard not to keep poking that bear just to see it dance.
Yeah, well, they don't see this as something that you should be joking about, right? Like, you go, like, it's the same thing. If you're at church, it's like, and you're like, oh, you can't take a joke. You're like, you're not allowed to make jokes here, right? And no one's an exception. Like, this is like, this time is life or death. We're all going to die tomorrow. Right. And you think you can make jokes? Like, this is very serious stuff. And you're like, well, me and my friends don't think so. So you can use it.
Exactly. I mean, it's like you've got and I guess part of the problem with that is that Donald Trump's so ripe for comedy is that he is a walking joke himself. And that I think is part of the problem is that these people, I think they've lost their sense of humor a lot because, it's what can you do with this topic? It's like the Daily Show, used to be genius under Jon Stewart. And now I can't turn it on because they just make jokes which are so obvious because Trump is Trump. What can you do? How can you add on to this creation that has been plopped down in front of us, who is a satire of himself? And when you've got that in front of you, it's like the joke's there. Like you've lost your ability to see beyond that joke from now on.
Yeah, it's a weird like spot that all these people are kind of in. I mean, it works against people that even are that would essentially be their team or whatever. Like I would consider myself not on a team. I guess that's what kind of libertarians are.
Yeah, exactly. But no team. Middle fingers up in both sides. All just spinning in circles. Middle fingers.
That's why it's the coolest one, I guess. Right? But the
well, not until everybody starts liking it. Then we'll have to find something new.
Yeah. I don't know. I always go back and forth. I remember before I'm like, I think I'm a libertarian. Then I'm like, maybe I'm not. I don't know. Whatever. But that doesn't even matter. Like the part.
You can't vote in this country anyway, so who the fuck cares what you think?
Yeah, that is true. Like I know some girls, like I was like running a show for like a girl that we had like a development deal, and this friend of mine, he's like super funny comic, but she's like you know, I wouldn't say like hardcore feminist as much as she just like doesn't know about this stuff that much. And she's just like a really nice person in her mind. She's like, well, yeah, it seems like we should help people. Like that's her opinion.
Right.
She doesn't really realize she's getting like forced to be part of a movement, but it's like, she can't just make a show about like a normal woman anymore. Her shows, like even if you're like quote unquote on their team, like a lesbian girl or whatever, your show has to be about like being a lesbian girl that's like hates white men. Like you can't just have like, I'm just a normal, like they've got to sort of like build that identity too, which is like constricting on their end too, right? It's like Trevor Noah or like Stephen Colbert. It's like, what are they going to do? They have to just be like, I'm, you know, like essentially like an arm for these, like a propaganda arm for these political parties.
Yeah, we'll have a quick break here to tell you guys once again to check out Mance Raider, a.k.a. Pete Quinones, and his podcast, Free Man Beyond the Wall. Of course, Pete is also over at the Libertarian Institute. He is writing over there, so he is a high-thinking libertarian mind and has done some fantastic guests. You can find it anywhere podcasts are, Stitcher, Apple, Google, things that I don't know or care about. Wherever you might want to listen to your podcast, he's there. Free Man Beyond the Wall. Of course, you can also go to freemanbeyondthewall.com. Prance to your mance, people. 'Tis the season. And while he might be kicked off Facebook and not be eligible to be in Santa's reindeer cadre, depends on your definition of naughty or nice, you can still give him a little podcast love this holiday season. No, exactly right.
But
and
Jon Stewart like invented a type of, you know, Jon Stewart's so charming and he like invented a type of comedy that didn't exist anymore and before. And then, you know, what happens with everything is, which is why it's going to be gross when you see like 5 years from now, people like, and then it's like, just, you know, here's a new podcast where they just say the N-word 20 times.
Right.
Because they're edgy.
Damn it. Has that already been made? Because that's my next podcast.
Yeah.
N-word with Brian McWilliams.
It's so weird. It's what happens to like, you know, I keep bringing it back to music, but it's always what happens to bands. Like when Pink Floyd has their like bass and they're like, this is what you need to make. And they're like, okay, do we make that or do we like try to do something else? And they all hate us.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, you know, let me ask you this too. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your Fckonomics podcast, kind of changing the bent a little bit, because I do think it's fascinating, and I'm definitely going to start listening to that podcast. And shame, and actually, I've heard of it before, and I didn't realize you were part of it, but I got to listen to it. So tell me a little bit about like how you got into that. And so you have an economics degree, like you went to college specifically for economics, and then what? Decided that this was a boring career and you couldn't take it.
I know I brought it up on this podcast a couple of times just because it is relevant, but I feel like it's a tiny, tiny part of my life. Like the fact that I just go for economics, but like I essentially like a math degree, right? But no, what happened was I went to school or whatever, but like I was in this band. Like by the time I was in like first year, I was like my band was like fairly popular, so I kind of like left university right into like a career as like in entertainment essentially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but the podcast, it's like Danny Paulshuck is like one of my best friends in comedy, like super funny guy. And he actually went to the same school as me. But we didn't know each other in school because he was a little older. But then, so we started doing this podcast. We did like 2 or 3 years. And then we added this guy, JJ Lieberman, who's another Jewish guy. And he was kind of one of the game changers in Toronto because he's like a super, like, I'll say anything.
Was he just the first Jew in Toronto? Was that why? They're like, we got one. Diversity, everybody. We did it. We don't kick out the Inuit now. We don't need that goddamn.
No, but he's gay. So he's gay. Like he fucking dude.
Double jeopardy.
Right. So yeah. Oh, Jews doesn't count. I feel like didn't the Jews get like kicked out of being ethnic now?
I think I don't think you're allowed to count them anymore. Like, you know, if you put Jewish at a college degree, they're like, that's points. It's like being Asian and trying to get into Harvard. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I used to always sort of joke around, or not joke around, like kind of do jokes about this isn't the joke, but like the premise that I always talked about was the idea that people are always like, white guys are the worst. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, dude.
And everyone's kind of like, there's another rung at the top of that pyramid. Even though white people run everything. And the Jews are sweating like, yeah, white people. Because right now they're just disguised as normal white people.
But yeah, man. So like, I mean, what I love about the aspect though that you had a bit of an economics background yourself, and that you're teaming up with people that have economics knowledge, is that you rarely do get comedy paired with economics, and especially in in our world of comedy here, people typically don't have a lot past like the girl you're talking about that you're running a show for. who, she's this chick. She wants to help people, and that's about the extent of the knowledge and the extent of her thought process into it. Is that it's great to have people that actually can look and say, okay, a lot of these things that are being talked about don't make any sense. A lot of the wokeness that's being pushed here, and a lot of the social plans are not economically feasible. They're just simply going to fall apart at the seams. So it's kind of fascinating. I mean,
they all get clumped in together too, right? It's all
for sure.
In it's all like like all these 10 things are even related. You know what I mean?
Oh God! Well, it's like the AOC's, the New Green Deal. It was like, okay, we're going to rebuild society. We're going to rebuild all the buildings. No more airplanes. Also, we're going to make sure that the blacks and the minorities get a fair shake in the workplace. And you're like, oh, hold on, wait, this is supposed to be a Green Deal. How did this become a black and Latino? And it's like, they try to.
Right.
It's like they're always lumping it together. Yeah.
My dad had a good point. I think it came from him, but that I remember him saying that it's very hard to do two things at once, right? And I feel like as a showrunner and a person that's made content for 20 plus years, it's like one of the biggest things I'm always like talking to people when I'm working with them is like, what are we saying here? They're always like, it's about this, but it's also about this. It's like, well, you don't get to do two things. Like you really need to figure out like what you're trying to say. And it's kind of like, what problem are you trying to solve? And they always kind of say like, okay, we need to build a cafeteria. It's like, okay, well, what if we build a cafeteria, but we also like solve the problem of get more workers or this? It's like, you don't get to do like solve 5 problems at once. Then you just end up like making a mess of the whole thing, right? So it's like a lot of it's like not discipline, it's not focused. So that's like I think a lot of times what happens is there. It's like everything kind of has to solve like 20 things at once. But then on top of that, I guess this is not on top of that necessarily, but tell me what you think of this. I feel like the most way when I'm always kind of like the libertarian thing, sometimes I feel like it doesn't maybe I don't know if agree with this is the right word, but because I'm from Canada, right? And like, so we're more left or whatever, right? And I remember on the news, I've heard so many of your like right wing or even libertarian people that there's like a big underlying thing of like, what if we have public health care? Like, what are we going to be like Canada? It would be like a mess. And I kind of, it's like, it's not really a mess. Like I'm there, you know what I mean? It's like, I get why it'd be hard to do here, but it's like, I'm kind of like, that's propaganda. Like it's sort of a pain in the ass sometimes, but like to me, I've always kind of, I guess maybe my point of view on that specific one was there's like a certain level of safety for your family that would help make a more civil society. Like if everyone knows that like if their son, gets his legs chopped off and he really needs like there's all this stuff and it's like that will be covered. Like that level of safety I think makes like a calmer society, which is maybe good. So it's like maybe I
can see that aspect of it. And I think a lot of people can understand that. And, like example on our podcast at one point, one of my buddies is on and he said, if I could understand a Medicare for all kind of fallback option. And I think a lot of people can understand that. The worry for, I think most people in libertarians is the cost and just that, the government inevitably, like we're talking about, Canada taking over the pot market and just fucking it all to hell. We see how bad everything is the government does, how much waste there is and how, just even Obamacare, they rolled it out. They spent, $10 billion on a website that didn't work ever. And so you see just how bad they are running it. And then on top of it,
it needs to be like catastrophe insurance, essentially, right?
Yeah,
like
I think people are for. I mean, I would actually be, even though it's unlibertarian to root for any sort of government program, I would be for something like that, where it's just at the very end, like yes, if it is catastrophic, you can have some sort of fallback in. If you're at a certain level, then fine. But it's also like
have some skin in the game, right? Like have deductibles on small things. Like there's so much medication and therapy. Like so many people like probably misuse it and go to therapy and stuff like that. Where you're like like if you had to even pay $10, you might not do that, right? So it's like even just like force people to have some skin in the game and then also make this like more of a catastrophe insurance situation.
But Canada also does have the well, you guys also, it's not like the, like over in the UK where it's just like the health system is the health system. There's no private insurance. Like you guys also still have private insurance options. There's still places people can go outside of the national system though, too, right?
No, like you're saying 2-tier?
I thought there was, I thought there were private medical institutes. Like Rand Paul, flew to Canada to have a procedure done. So, he doesn't have Canadian insurance, so he must have paid. So there are options outside of that, aren't there?
Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I think I've heard the other thing where Canadians fly to America if they want to. Like if you need a surgery and you're gonna have to wait like 2 weeks or whatever, and you need stuff, you would fly to America.
I was just talking about my wife's in like my wife's pregnant. She's gonna have a baby in a few months, and she's in like this Facebook mommy group. Yeah, thanks. But so one of the people on her mommy group was from Canada, and she goes, yeah, she's like, I guess she's either had a baby a while ago and then had an IUD put in, whatever the block thing is they put in their vaginas.
Yeah.
Women always shoving shit in there. So whatever it is, they said she had to wait a year to have the procedure to take it out. A year to have a baby. And so that's like the fear that I think a lot of us have, where you go, that's fucking crazy. Like all you want to do is get this thing out of your body. Yeah, now you can't.
You're right. So it's always a slippery slope, right? It's always that slippery slope where as soon as you give them an inch, they take a mile, right? You'd be like, okay, well, this, like, I mean, in Canada, it's like right now it's like, okay, so everything's covered. And the big fight is like, well, like all the dental stuff should be covered. And then the big fight is like, should be this like therapy. Like, it just, I guess the issue is it never stops.
Right. Yeah. It never stops. And then also like you do see a lot of wait times. Yeah. Like, I just talked about this in my last podcast. I don't want to talk too long about it again, but the UK,
I can't solve it.
Well, just like they have the epically long wait lists, and like they have like Britain's got some of the lowest cancer survival rates, just because when you get to that higher tier, that's where it becomes a big problem, But at the same time, I do understand that option of like just something to fall back on if, so you're not going to die in a ditch.
I mean, and going bankrupt. I mean, right? It's like that essentially, like, someone gets cancer and you go bankrupt. Like, I don't know.
But at least you're alive. Would you rather be dead?
Right.
I mean, if we're being honest, I'd rather be bankrupt than alive and eating SpaghettiOs in my underpants, which I've done before anyway when I first moved to LA.
It's fine when it's just you. And I agree with that when you're talking about like a single man.
Yep.
But usually when you're talking about a family, it's like, I think that makes people, makes a society that people are like, want to protest and blah, blah, blah. You get unrest, a civil unrest.
Yeah, true. Well, people are too busy protesting Donald Trump, being mean on Twitter. So they've been, priorities are in different places.
So that was one of my new videos that I want to do a video. Like, I mean, I think I'm going to go to the next one again every weekend.
It is great content, man. I'm rooting for it. So, and by the way, so you guys, I'll link to this in the show notes. But Ryan Long Comedy is the Instagram, and I'll link it all at lionsofliberty.com/ELL150. So I'll link to all this as well as Ryan's website. But yeah, you guys, everybody out there, definitely check it out. It's just absolutely fucking hilarious. What was the other one I was watching?
I mean, no one's gonna there isn't a lot of people doing that because it's like it's basically you got to be. This is something I've kind of built a skill of doing for like 15 years, and it's like it's so touchy right now that most people do it, and they can't. It's a very difficult time to sort of pull this stuff off.
Oh well, dude. Well, and also honestly, I appreciate your balls in doing it because there's just not a lot of people that are willing to go out there and go against the left woke culture because they come after you. And because they're going to, I'm sure there's got to be some article somewhere that says Ryan Long, alt-right comedian, when clearly you're not alt-right, but that's what they'd like to, they like to throw these around just because you're out there being funny and making fun of these people who have just, lost their minds.
I did this stuff on Ali G show. I mean, no one would call that. I mean, Sacha Baron Cohen's new show, he kind of had to go a little harder skewering the left-wing stuff, but his original show, he would go to feminist rallies and talk to girls that were giving him head and stuff. It's not to me, that's not politically charged. That's just hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just going to anywhere where people are taking themselves so serious and messing with their thing. To me, it's just always been so fucking funny.
Oh, it's awesome. Oh, so I know what the other one was. Wait a minute. I want to talk about this because this was, I think, brilliant too. And ties with what we're talking about was you went to a rally and you're trying to get, or you had something about trying to get pussy at the feminist rally. I'm trying to find the video scrolling through, but I can't find it right now. But dude, that plays in exactly to a lot of what I think. Half these people, they truly bought in, right? They're in. They've been pilled. They believe everything's going to end and the world's under Trump.
Line and sinker. They're dying tomorrow. It's over. Global warming. We're dead tomorrow.
That's half of them. And then the other half are guys like you're talking about that are at these rallies that are there and they know that they can slide in there and get that pussy by being so woke and that this is the path of least resistance at this point in time. And God knows they're going to change their tune in 2 years, whatever happens. They're just going to go with the wind. But tell me a little bit about that experience.
That's that gross part that I was talking about, where it's like, that's the thing you're going to see a lot of in the next 2 years. Like, and I've already started to see it, because it's like people that like used to be like a little cool, but then they sort of got wrapped up in this Trump stuff, and then now they're kind of realizing that like all of the cool people like aren't fucking, like all the cool guys are not like into this shit, right? Yeah. Like all the funny people, like, and it's not doing well on stage.
Well, girls love bad boys, right? You can't be a bad boy if you're wagging your fucking finger at Donald Trump in office. Nobody likes that.
No, you're a teacher, right? Like they want to be, you don't want to be like you don't want to be the parents telling kids like what you realize you're like telling people what they should and shouldn't say, and you're like, oh, this isn't like cool, and you're kind of like 3 years later like getting off the train. But the problem is now they're like, I've seen people like on the internet, a lot of them are like, comedians shouldn't be told what to say, and you're like, by you 3 months ago. Like, are you kidding me? Like, but they're like, yeah, just everyone's like kind of getting off the train, because it's like, it's whatever. The trend's kind of dried up. Like the money's been made. Like there's not going to be like a new I hate Trump comedian on the scene. Like, you know what I mean? There's not like a new Stephen Colbert with like a new I hate Trump take. Like it's over.
Yeah, no, we've hit peak outrage. It's like, well, then again, every time I say that, of course, we somehow ratchet up another level of outrage. But yeah, it does seem like it's run its course. Let's get back to
maybe we're not at peak outrage, but we are at peak like the play. Like at first it was like a scramble and the real estate's all taken. Like there's not gonna be like another big like I hate Trump Netflix special that everyone's like, oh shit, who's this comedian?
Yeah.
Like
God, remember how many fucking Trump shows came out, by the way, and like within 3 months of him taking office, I think there were 4 different I hate Donald Trump shows that were on there. It was like 2 animated. Comedy Central had its own Donald Trump show. Like it's fucking madness. And yeah, it's all gone now. It's like you said, that gold rush has been mined clean. So what do you think? What's the next thing? You're in TV. You're pitching TV shows. What's the next big thing? I'll put you right on the spot.
Well, so that's not on the spot for me. I think about this stuff. Like that's all I think about. But in my opinion, it's like, so if you look at what came after, feminism in the 70s was essentially people like Jerry Seinfeld and really like a bit back to basics of like deconstructionalists. So to me, that's kind of a little bit what I'm doing. Like whenever everything gets like really serious, it takes someone to sort of pull the rug under the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's what like even Tim and Eric, like they were making fun of what like the seriousness of cable news, right?
Right.
So you need a mix of like good jokes that are like culturally relevant, but like the casing of what comes next to me is like a deconstructionalist, like almost like it's not like you're not telling a guy when a guy comes in with his like I hate Trump or whatever, you're not saying like arguing the opposite, like this is why you're wrong. What you're saying, like, oh, like a dude's coming in with his I hate Trump opinions, and then the guy's kind of like, oh, I mean, like you're not gonna. Like if you and your family is like chilling, right? And your buddy comes in, you're like, oh, here's Ted. He's really hyped up about Trump. Like all of a sudden he doesn't want to like yell about Trump because it makes him feel like an idiot. You know what I mean? So it's this idea of like sort of rolling your eyes at like people's beliefs in a way that makes them sort of like feel embarrassed to have them. Like, and you should feel embarrassed. Like if you're at your family reunion and you come in and you're like arguing against your grandmother.
Oh, dude, right?
Like,
yeah,
you should be embarrassed by that, right? So
people that are like ditching their families over Thanksgiving. I mean, perfect timing for my dogs to come in and my wife. Great, we're not in the middle of a conversation or anything here. Get out of here, you prego. Move it. Sorry about that. Typical. All right, get along. Anyway, she's a wonderful woman. Anyway, no, I lost my train of thought now. What we were fucking talking about.
Yeah, just that, like, that talking about. I just think that you should be embarrassed for being that person. I think that kind of instead of arguing those points head on, it's like I don't talk to my audience right now. Like I don't tell them like this is why that stuff's stupid. I assume they already agree with me. Yeah. So it's like. Even just some little things. Like imagine you were saying that like, whether I think this or not, like let's say you were saying women are annoying, right? Like someone like Bill Burr might say, no, I don't care what anyone says. Okay, women are fucking annoying. He might argue it like that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I would say, hey, you know how women are annoying? And then I would just assume they already agree with me and move past it, right?
Right.
And they might like argue in their head, but you're already past and you're like either on the train. But like the truth is you kind of set up a scenario where people want to be like, subscribe to your perspective and they're not like questioning you every step of the way, right?
Yeah,
I think that's what like all good cultural movements do, right? You remember like with I don't know, for me like Howard Stern was someone that liked him so much that it was kind of like anytime I would just subscribe to most things he thought. Like if I liked someone and he'd be like, I hate that guy. And I'm like, well, I guess I hate that guy. Yeah.
No, totally, man. I had the same thing. I mean, it's like now obviously now I find myself challenging that a lot more, but I think that's also a product of the times where I've seen so many people, like we were talking about earlier, where you have comedians that are coming out and protecting free speech who are shaming people 2 years earlier. Because of the cultural change, I find myself rejecting a lot of the people I used to like and now saying, I don't know. Like I now find myself questioning every single thing anybody says just because I'm now too suspicious of people's biases to let anything go. But previously, yeah.
Well, it is true. No, I know what you're saying. There's a part of that because you kind of go back, you kind of, I like to think that I'm introspective to some degree myself. And I'm like, oh, what? You can't like watch a comedian that you disagree with politically, but like I kind of can't either, right? Like, and I think there is a reason for that. It's like, it's because if I'm watching a movie, right, and you're like, it's like just propaganda for woke stuff or whatever, propaganda for whatever, right? It's like, it's not that I can't enjoy it because I disagree with it as much as I know it's compromised, right?
Right,
so it's
exactly.
Like, I know I'm watching something like, do you know that you are like arguing with a soldier for a movement? You're not arguing with like a human being. You're arguing with someone that's like compromised. You're watching something that's compromised. And I think that if you're like a critical thinker, it's hard to swallow that. You're right. And you're like, I don't know, it's a turnoff, right? So it makes
without a doubt,
right there.
Well, you see that with a lot of TV shows now, and so I have a hard time even consuming a lot of media in the current era because, like Game of Thrones, for example. I don't know if you were a Game of Thrones fan or watched it, but I watched this, all the arc, and then they got off of the books and went down this road where you can see as the wokeness came about, even stronger, there were specific moments that just took me completely out of the show because you've got, strong female characters. And of course, if you're a writer, if you're, making TV content, if you're writing and you're telling a good story, you shouldn't need to explicitly tell to people, hey, these women are pretty strong and intelligent and they can do what a man can do, because they should just be fucking doing that automatically. And, you go along with it. That's the character. And I see so many times now in content, they pull you out of the show because they have to hit you over the head with this social message. And it's hacky. And it's now made me so turned off.
Right? I mean, I remember watching Transformers and there was like a scene with a beer where they threw them the beer and then like it came down on like a line and they had this like dolly shot on the beer and it was glistening and the guy took it and it like took the sip and he was like, and I was like, all right, that is a bit much.
and then you went and got a beer.
Yeah, it's just like you're like, come on, you're shoving it in my face a little much here. So it's that you're like, am I watching a commercial? It's like, especially men don't like to be told what to do, right? As soon as you start to feel like when you're with your girlfriend and you start to feel like she's like, oh, I like you, this friend of yours, blah blah, and you're like, what are you up to right now? Like all of a sudden, you're like you're being told something in bad faith. It feels like you don't want to. And that's what, like, a lot of times, audiences or viewers or creators are like making something essentially in bad faith, in your opinion, which makes it hard to digest.
Yeah, completely.
And I think that's why when you're not doing that, and I mean, that's probably why your like podcast have had success and stuff like that. It's like when people aren't doing that, so many times people are just like, oh shit, sweet. Like so happy that someone's like just being real.
Just being authentic. Yeah, exactly. Just being fucking authentic.
I mean,
and
that's why I've had so many views. So I like last year I've been able to, make stuff, and I'm not making clickbait political stuff, but I'm making stuff that I think is just honest. And it's like you're getting so much like you're feeling people's reaction to it and getting millions of views because people are just like happy that someone's not lying to them anymore.
Well, honestly,
I'm not crazy. I think you need someone to sort of interrupt you there again, but that's what it is. It's like a lot of people were like, "Am I crazy?" And then someone's like, kind of comes and they're like, "No, they're trust me, this whole thing's crazy. You're not crazy."
Right? Yeah,
and that's like okay, good. I thought I was losing my mind.
Yeah, 90% of the population right now is literally finding these videos or finding podcasts like mine and yours, and and just exactly that, like that big exhale of thank God I'm not alone. It's like because you never fucking know it.
Less mad too. Yeah, it makes you less mad too. So it's like, when people talk about, that their comedy's helping or their art's helping, like the truth is it's not. Like when you rile people up, it divides people. It's like, the 100%. Truth is like, it's like one of those things where, okay, it's dishonesty makes people very mad, right? Because if you have, okay, so take like, we're talking about a guy. Let's just say a guy's named Dave. Let's just say a hypothetical guy, and he's a mediocre guy. He's whatever. If someone comes in and they're like, Dave is the best guy in the world. He is so smart. He's so funny. And you're like, I don't know about that. And they're like, he's amazing. And you're like, okay, Dave, I saw him do this. He sucks. Like, before you know it, you're arguing he's crappy and you're like mad about it. But then if they come in the other way and they're like, this guy's friggin' the worst. And you're like, I don't know, he's pretty good. You're like, just Dave's rules.
Right.
Like, so it's like really what hypes people up is when you're lying to them. And like, so it's, and people might even know that. It's just like their instinctual like mechanisms as a human is like to not like get lied to.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, and I think also like there's so many just kind of into the culture today, we're constantly being lectured as to what's good, what's bad, what we can say, what we can't say, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. And like, you know, I look at just, you know, stuff with like, for example, race. We've got all these different races now. And we're told constantly that, you know, we have to do this and we have to do that. And we have to, you know, respect specific diversity. And that, you know, there was one woman, I can't remember what school she was at, arguing that to look at people and be colorblind was in fact evil somehow. And that we have to explicitly notice people's color. And it just blows my mind because, you know, like we're talking about, it's diversive. It's splitting people apart where, you know, before I remember the fucking, not De La Soul, who's this? It was like a black chick band that was super hot and I had a crush on when I was a little kid. But they had this song like, free your mind and the rest will follow. Be colorblind, don't be so shallow. Whatever that song was. I'm not doing a great rendition. But it's like colorblind was like the big thing. We got to that point and now they're like, no. You got to go back to hating each other again. We got to make sure that the black people and the white people eyeball each other on the street awkwardly. You know, it's like, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it does. It does feel like it, dude. And it's like, I grew up in like super multicultural area. Like my friends were like half white, half black, and my family's super multicultural. And just like the way it came up is like we used to do like a white on black football game at our school, and it was like it was like literally was like our best friends. We would do it like once a month, and it was like a fun thing. And we'd all because it was like hilarious, and we had like different chants and stuff. It's like because we were friends and we didn't think we were like better than each other.
Right.
It was like if that can't happen. It's like if the underlying thing is like, but we also have to like admit that the black people are lower than us. Like they'd be like, what the fuck? Like you can't be friends with someone like that. It's kind of like, and if you're gonna be friends with someone, you have to, you don't pretend things don't exist. It's like if you have a friend that's like really short, it's not like no one talks about it. You're like,
exactly.
Okay, Joe's short.
Exactly. And you make fun of him for it. Yeah. It's like, you know, it's like anything. If you're being honest with yourself and honest with somebody else, you should be able to make fun of that person. You should be able to say whatever you're going to say. As long as you have a comfort level with them, you should be able to address whatever.
Being friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
A lot of these people are like aren't they don't like kind of, I hate like going down the like avenue of like you don't have black friends as if it's like some good thing or bad thing or whatever. It's just, but the truth is, it's like generally the people that are like that didn't grow up around these people because the truth is like if you're gonna grow up around like a race of people or a type of people or women or men or anything, it's like there's gonna be things that you like about the culture and then there's things that you don't like about the culture. But like that's the part that they miss is the part that you do like. They're always like, if you're like, oh, because like with women, men would always be like, oh, women are fucking annoying for this reason or whatever. But you're like, also, this is why like we like them and I like hang out with my girl better than my friends. Like, so they leave out the positive part, right? It's like you might say that Jamaican culture, this is what I like annoys me about it, and this is what's awesome about it. And that's the same way you would with a friend, like my friend Chad, like this is what's annoying about him. And like, you know, like comedy is like pattern recognition and like making generalizations and literally the like entire base of it. They're like, oh, you're not allowed to do that. And you're like, well, unfortunately, like that's how my brain works. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like,
it's you know, and that's the thing too with comedy, and why I you know, again, big fan of your comedy, and I'll obviously recommend everybody check you out. But you know, it's like comedy is at its heart. It should not have a political bias. It's just because no matter what side you fall on, you should still be able to see the funny in a situation and say and pinpoint that with a scalpel and be like, this is what's fucked up in this situation right here, and I'm going to talk about it. And the politics of the moment shouldn't matter. The wokeness of the moment shouldn't matter. If the funny is there, the funny is there. I mean, I've told some horrible jokes on stage. They're just atrocious, you know, but they got laughs.
Yeah, but sometimes it's hard. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry about that.
No, go ahead, man.
I just kind of like to sort of add on that is like sometimes it does matter though because it's like it's like things. I guess this is kind of like where I even like disagree with maybe like a Jordan Peterson a little bit sometimes because like he's so against the postmodernists where it's like I think it's like the truth is like things kind of only do matter in their cultural context a lot, especially humor. It's like, think about, so to me, a lot of the stuff, like, you know, making fun of religion, for example, was only funny because it was like so taboo. Whereas now, to me, I find it like not funny.
Yeah, there's more atheists than anything now, so it's kind of like meh.
Yeah, so the joke in there is still good, but the energy component of it like is like a moving target and cultural. So there is a part of it that when like people are funny is funny, it's like, well, maybe, but it's like, you know, everyone's gonna find things different, and the context matters. And the like, if you're with your buddies and everyone's drinking and someone has this like funny story about hooking up with a girl, like that might be hilarious there. But if there's a bunch of people like smoking weed and like a drunk guy runs in and he starts talking about like all this puss, you'd be like, what are you doing?
Well, of course, yeah.
So it is hard to like always isolate like what is like. So I think there is that like purist element of comedy where it's like funny. Like, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that all the time.
Well, I mean, funny's funny, but in the context of what you were talking about, like we definitely are in agreement here. I mean, funny's funny. But of course it's finding something within the cultural context at the moment.
You're right.
I mean,
yeah. So I do agree with you because you're saying that like an audience, there is such an objective component about it where like people will be like, you know, if you're killing in front of an audience, they're like, that wasn't funny. And you're like, well, it was. I just killed.
Right.
You are wrong about that.
Yeah.
There is a right or wrong thing. Yeah. So I do agree with you that, but it can't expand past the context that it's in. That's probably what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
you're right. I do agree with you.
We have a quorum then. Yeah. Well, man, you know, it's been about an hour. You've been very gracious with your time, and honestly, it's been great talking to you. I'd love to have you back on another time. Especially, I know you're still getting settled down in New York, but yeah, man, give me a.
Yeah, it's been good though.
Yeah, this is fun as hell. I mean, I really had a good time. So tell my audience where they can find everything that you're doing. And like I said, I'm going to link to it in the show notes anyway at lionsofliberty.com/ELL150. But because I know people are very lazy and will not go to websites, tell them where you can be found, where you're going to be doing your comedy in New York, where they can find you online, all that good stuff.
When does this come out?
It's going to be coming out actually on Wednesday. I'll look at my goddamn phone. Next Wednesday, the 13th. Yes, lucky 13th.
Okay, so don't give my shows for this weekend.
Yeah, give them for next week.
I'm performing at like the Stand in New York Stand Up New York and a bunch of the clubs here. But I think the best way, if you have Instagram or Twitter, like to add me at Ryan Long Comedy, and then check out my podcast, Fckonomics Podcast. And if you want to check out these videos, it's all on my YouTube. So youtube.com/fatbrethrens, which is PHATBREDRENS, or just search Ryan Long and it'll probably come up. And then some of the videos, if you want to check out thehardtimes.net, I do all the videos at that website. It's like a cool satire website. And then my series Torontopia is all on YouTube too. So RyanLongComedy.com. That's
awesome.
There you go.
Beautiful, man. Thank you. Well, yeah. Thank you. Thanks again for coming on, man. This is awesome. And I will make sure to keep in touch.
Yeah, super nice of you, man. Yeah, hit me up if you're ever in New York too.
Yeah, most definitely. My sister lives in Queens.
For me. That's cool here. Yeah, sorry. Hang on. Say hi to Lou for me. I think that guy's awesome.
Yeah, I will. I'll say what's up tonight. It's funny connection. So I'll be seeing him in about 2 hours.
Yeah, even man, dude, that Trump video. Do you remember the one where it was like the comedian that makes fun of Donald Trump? That was so funny.
Oh yeah, where he's just on stage, hacking it up. Well, he's doing his stand up tonight, so we'll see what he does.
He was ahead of the curve with a lot of this stuff. Like he was kind of like right out front of the gates, like making some really good stuff.
Oh, for sure,
before other people.
Yeah, man. I had his buddy Toby Marociano has also been on this show. Who he was with We the Internet TV before, and now I think he's split off from doing that. But I'm curious to see if I see him tonight too. But yeah, man, I'll hit you up and yeah, like I said, this has been awesome. God bless. Good luck in the Big Apple. I know you'll be successful. Thanks, I believe buddy. In you.
Thanks, buddy. Good talking to you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, so that wraps up my interview with Ryan Long, everybody. And again, you can find all of the show notes linking to everything he has done at lionsofliberty.com/ELL150. And also, I do want to give a shout out again. You heard me talking about Lou Perez with Ryan, and I got to give Lou a big shout out because the event he put on with We the Internet TV was fantastic. They have a documentary called 5 Reasons We Need Hate Speech, and which they showed it there at the event. Lou did about 10 minutes of comedy. They did a showing of this documentary, which was great. And then also they had 2 different speakers join him, including Deborah So, who's very controversial. But yeah, Awesome stuff, man. So there you go. I've also put that documentary at the show notes page so you guys can check it out, watch it, and support Ryan and Lou. All right, peace out, my people. That'll do it for me, Brian McWilliams from the Lions of Liberty and from Electric Libertyland. Always stay plugged into Liberty.